So we had a discussion the other day about protein and recovery. Can we dive a bit into what protein actually is and what it does for the average Joe, but also for athletes?
Yeah, sure. So protein is one of the macronutrients. So we spoke about carbohydrates in one of the previous episodes, and protein is also one of the macronutrients. It is made up of little tiny building blocks that we call amino acids. And I like to explain it as like this wall behind me has bricks in it, right? And those bricks you can kind of see as amino acids that make up this wall. And it has a combination of different amino acids, and that makes the wall nice and strong. And you get 20 of these amino acids. 11 of them are non-essential, meaning that your body can produce them, and then 9 is actually essential, meaning that you need to consume them in your diet. And yeah, so that's why it's quite important to make sure you're getting in all of the 20 amino acids for that complete strong wall at the end of the day.
So that's the main source of protein, right? Is our diets.
Yes, that's correct. Well, I mean, like we said, 11 of these amino acids are made in the body, but 9 of them we need to consume through the diet, through protein sources in the diet specifically. So protein is, most people know it's really important for muscles and muscle building and recovery, but protein plays a massive role in a lot of other functions in the body as well. It's important for hormone production, it's important for enzyme production, it plays a role in your blood and just actually almost every aspect of your body. So it's not just for the gym bros and the fitness people. It's also for your general average population needs to be consuming adequate amount of protein for general health as well.
Okay, and for just a normal healthy diet, which would be the main protein sources for us, if you look at food specifically?
Yes. So protein can either be in a form of animal protein or in plant protein.
Okay.
So animal protein, of course, would be something like eggs, dairy, your meat, chicken, fish, and the likes. And then your plant proteins are for your vegans or maybe also vegetarians that don't consume animal protein. So that would be your beans, your legumes like chickpeas and lentils, black beans, those types of things. Also, your nuts and seeds contain protein, tofu, soy, and so forth.
And these sources will have different amino acid profiles, so they won't necessarily all have all the amino acids that you require.
Yes, that's correct. So animal proteins are complete, meaning that they have all 20 amino acids, which makes them easy to kind of consume and know that you're ticking the box. So you're getting all 20 amino acids, you find like that. However, we do see with the plant proteins that they don't necessarily have a complete protein profile, meaning that they might only have 16 of the 20 amino acids, where they have 11 of the essential but non-essential, but 5 of the essential. So then we're missing out a little bit, and we know that we need all of those amino acids actually to get for all the process in the body to happen effectively and for muscle recovery and so forth. So what's really like a practical thing if you are using plant proteins rather than animal proteins is to combine plant proteins. So we see combining, for example, rice. You would think, but rice, it's not a protein. So rice contains amino acids as well, but mixing rice and lentils, for example, actually gives that complete protein profile. So you'll see a lot of the plant protein blends, like in a protein shake or so forth, are often mixed. So it's a rice and a pea protein, for example. It's just to really get that complete amino acid profile.
Okay, cool. And for protein, if we look at athletes in general, why? So we know it's great for recovery and very important for recovery. Before we go into that specifically, what other positive effects does it have for active people?
So as I mentioned earlier, it is really important in hormone production as well. So hormones, your enzymes, your neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin, all of them actually, the amino acids are present in the manufacturing or the production rather of those compounds in the body as well. So it's not just for building muscle, but it's actually to recover as well. And even if, let's say, for example, you are doing an endurance sport or you're not really in the business of building muscles, for example, you're fine with the way you look. It is still really important for the muscle recovery, because we do see with exercise, even if it's endurance exercise, there is some damage happening to your muscles, and we need the amino acids to actually repair and recover those muscles.
Okay.
And then the other thing with protein, which is actually really important, is it assists with satiety. So if you are someone that maybe you'd like to work on your body composition and you want to decrease the amount of, fat that you have in your body, or let's say lose some weight, for example, we do see protein is very effective in that. Like a higher protein diet helps with that, because it keeps you fuller for longer, and it's not as high in calories like, for example, your fat would be. So you're benefiting from feeling fuller, so you're not going to eat as much, so you can be in that calorie deficit. And then we also see that building muscle and having more lean muscle or lean tissue in your body increases your metabolism. And everyone's always like, no, I have a slow metabolism, that's why I'm overweight. And that, of course, that does play a role. But if you do want to increase your metabolism, the most effective and long-term effect or long-term way would be to build muscle and to increase the lean mass in your body, because then you'll increase your metabolism, which will increase your calorie expenditure every day.
Okay, great. So if we look at the numbers for just a normal healthy adult that's not necessarily exercising, anything between 0.8 and 1.2 grams of protein per kilogram body weight is suggested.
Mm-hmm.
What would that be for an active athlete or an active person or athlete?
Yes, so 0.8 to 1.2 grams per kilogram is quite low. I would say it's sometimes even quite difficult to achieve. So most people tend to go to the higher end of it, and it is really safe to do so if you don't have any pre-existing kidney issues. So I know a lot of people are like, no, high protein diets are very bad for your kidneys, and it's really only in the case where you do already have an existing kidney problem. So it won't damage your kidneys unless you go crazy and like 5 grams per kilogram of body weight, for example. But we do see with the research showing that going up to maybe even 1.5, 1.7, even up to 2.5 grams per kilogram of protein has actually been shown to be effective in building lean body mass and assisting with body composition and muscle recovery and so forth.
Okay. And if we look at protein supplementation, so you get various sources of protein supplementation. Can we go a bit into whey protein, whey protein versus plant protein, or maybe animal-based protein, and what the differences are for people?
Yes, so interestingly enough, just to understand where whey protein comes from, it's from dairy. So, if you leave milk outside, it separates,
yes,
right? So you get the watery part, and then you get the thick, curdly part. So the watery part is whey, and the thick part is casein. So those are your milk proteins that naturally occur in dairy products. And so when it comes to your whey protein shakes, for example, it's made from dairy. So if you are someone that is sensitive to dairy or whatever the case may be, then a plant protein would be a better alternative for you. But you do find that certain whey or whey-based protein shakes claim that they either whey isolate or concentrate or hydrolyze, and so it gets a bit confusing for people, especially if you look at the price tag. Sometimes it's a bit overwhelming and you think about which one is better. And it really just comes down to your digestive system. We see that the whey concentrate, for example, is a little bit higher in lactose, and the whey isolate is lower in lactose. So it'll be almost zero. Very few companies can get it right to get it at 0% lactose, but it is lower in lactose. So if you do feel that bloating effect that people often complain about if they have a protein shake, then opt for something that is lower in lactose, because it's often the lactose that causes that stomach discomfort.
So it's just the way that the whey protein is made. What's the main difference? Why is it better? For why does it have less lactose in?
It's just how it's been processed.
Okay, so
it's just been isolated from the mixture of whey, for example.
And that's also why it's a little bit more expensive than the normal whey protein. If you look at a whey versus a whey isolate, because of it's more the way that they've processed it.
The processing, definitely. The other thing is we also do see that, for example, the whey isolate contains 90% of that product contains protein, and then whereas whey concentrate, since it has a bit more lactose, for example, only it has about 70 to 80%
Okay.
protein. So that's also, you're paying, but you're getting more protein, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's important to look at it that way. And no pun intended. So, and then of course, if you, let's say, you feel like I'm not going to pay for whey isolate, or you still feel a bit of the stomach issues with whey, then a plant-based protein shake would be a better alternative. So most of the plant-based protein products on the market are pea protein, because it has a really good amino acid profile. It has a lot of the branch chain amino acids, which has been shown to be very effective in muscle recovery and muscle synthesis. But then often you do see that they mix it with rice protein, which is also completely fine. And that blend is often just to really get that complete protein or the complete amino acid profile. So those, you also get soy protein. The only concern with soy protein for a lot of people is that it often may impact your hormone, especially estrogen metabolism and amount of estrogen in the body, since it does have an effect on that. So for some people, especially with some genetic mutations and so forth, might find that soy has an impact on their estrogen levels. So the safer alternative is just to opt for pea protein or a rice protein.
Is there any way to predict it or to test if you're going to have that
Yes, yeah,
sensitivity towards it?
definitely. So the genetic testing we actually have on the website does do the specific SNPs, we call them SNPs, or the genetic markers, to see what is your estrogen metabolism like, and if you are at risk of, not metabolizing estrogen as effectively as possible. And then if you consume soy products, then that might just add a little bit more of a burden to the body. And then, okay, you should maybe not consume it as much, especially if you are vegan or vegetarian and you're already consuming tofu or other soy products. It's not a bad idea to look into that.
Okay, so if you are someone that's never used a protein powder and you go into the shops, or maybe go have a look at on our website. So the big thing that, like we've said in our previous episode as well, is we want to try and avoid or help with that confusion. These big massive tubs of like protein powder, and where do you start, how much do you take, what's in them. So what's a good thing, or what are the things that you have to look out for if you are going to start on a protein powder, let's say a whey protein? What's important to look out for?
So for anything, actually, not just protein, but any product that you consume, whether it's a bar or cereal or whatever it might be, is to always look at the ingredient list. The ingredient list is, by regulation, has to be listed from the product or the ingredient that is in that product from the most to the least, so in descending order. So if the very first product or ingredient on that ingredient list is something dodgy or something you don't even recognize, or it's not protein, then it should raise a question mark in your mind. Think, but why? It's a protein shake. It should have whey or soy or plant protein, whatever, pea protein. It should be one of the first ingredients, because that is what majority of the product should be made up of. The other thing is then also the amount of ingredients in that. So you don't really want to go for something that has this long list of ingredients, because then often it has added like preservatives and fillers and those types of things that's unnecessary, and we ideally don't want to aim for. And then of course, if you can look at the nutritional label, look for something that contains at least 20 to 25 grams of protein per serving, because otherwise you might go for a cheaper protein, but then you need to add like 7 scoops, and then it doesn't even work out that cost effectively. If you really look at it in that sense. Then also, most of the products list the amino acids, so go count them. Make sure there's about 20, and then okay, this is a complete amino acid profile. And I mean, the nice thing about having the informed choice or informed sport tag on it is that there's nothing dodgy really in there. So, and then of course, I would often recommend just go look at our website, because we've chosen the better brands that we feel
are safe to use
and don't put rubbish in their products just to sell a product.
Okay. Timing of protein, especially if you're going to use a protein powder, is there specific time if you are training when you should use it? After training, before training, does it make a difference?
It does. It does. There's a bit of controversy around it. You need to remember also that I think sometimes we forget. The only thing that really gets absorbed directly once you put it in your mouth is sugar or carbohydrates, because there's amylase, which is a type of enzyme in your mouth that already starts to digest some of the carbohydrates. So, but all of the other foods, and that's only a tiny amount, all of the other foods need to be, you chew it, then you swallow, it goes into your stomach, then it needs to be digested in the stomach, then it goes into the intestine, and then from the intestine it actually only goes into the blood, where it then can start to do its job. So that takes a bit of time.
Yeah.
And especially with protein, it really also, protein being a slower gastric emptying product, it takes some time to actually get into the bloodstream. We do see that whey products or whey protein is faster digesting, so it does enter the bloodstream a little bit faster than, for example, your pea protein or your plant proteins. Or casein, for example, is really slow digesting. So if you are someone that is always hungry, or you go to bed and you wake up hungry in the middle of the night, having a casein based protein would also be a better option, because then it'll keep you fuller for longer. But in terms of your timing, if you really want to nail that window, it's quite difficult, because it depends on how fast you're going to digest the food. So if you consume it beforehand, you know that at least during your training session, especially for women, there's research showing that it's quite effective for women to take about 20 grams of protein before training, because by the time that they're done training, it has start going into the bloodstream and into the muscles and so forth, which is quite nice. But otherwise, if you're not really gonna train within 24 hours after your session, let's say you're gonna do your session this morning and then only again tomorrow morning, then you don't necessarily need to worry too much about I need to get something in straight after your training session. However, if you know that you need it to do another session later on in the day, or you have a really crazy day, then it's better to try and time it within an hour after your session, so that you are getting it in. But to be on the safe side is to kind of, a nice way to think of it is habit stacking. So to stack your training with taking your protein, so you're not going to forget, you're not going to get busy, and you're not going to forget to take your protein after that. And another thing, what we see is, we mentioned that you can go up to 2.5 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. The ideal, according to research, is also to spread it out throughout the day. So you don't really want to take this massive amount of protein all at once. You kind of want to provide the muscles and the body with a consistent supply of protein throughout the day. So again, if you can take protein right after your training session, you know that you're going to hit your goals throughout the day, but it's not really going to, if you do it 2 hours after your training session, it's not that training session is not going to give you the gains. You're still going to see results.
Yeah. Okay. And for our endurance athletes that are maybe, training for or competing or racing for hours on end, where does protein come in those fueling strategies?
That's a very good question. I think, again, just remembering that protein slows down the gastric emptying. In other words, how fast things move out of your stomach. We don't really want to overdo protein, especially when you are functioning at a higher heart rate. We don't want things to linger in the stomach, because then there's a very high risk of, the stomach discomfort and so forth. So I would say in general, if you're just doing a one-day event where it is a longer event, you can maybe take in a bit of protein. So some of the products we do stock contains a great mix of carbohydrates and a bit of protein, or maybe just a little bit of amino acids for those instances, which I think would be great. But if it's a one-day thing, then I wouldn't stress too much about it. You should be fine. Just make sure you are recovering optimally afterwards. You are eating enough and you are replenishing your stores. However, if it's a multi-day event like the Epic or Gravel Burn that's now, or a stage run, trail run race, whatever the case may be, then I think it's a little bit more important to actually consume. You're almost thinking about eating today for tomorrow.
Makes sense.
Because you're not going to be able to recover as effectively, or you're not going to have 24 hours of proper recovery, because you're going to finish and then recover and then have to go again for however many days on end. In that sense, I would say prioritizing protein during your session or during your event is also really important. So, but like I said, there's luckily really great products out there that cater for those people, that have really easy to digest proteins as well as carbohydrates, and the ratio between carbohydrates and protein is also optimized to not cause that stomach discomfort. But a very important word of caution is you need to train with it.
Yeah.
You can't never have used it and then go on a 5-day stage race and then all of a sudden just for the first time take it there. I would not recommend that. So you need to train your gut, because it
Okay.
is something different than just having carbs or whatever it might be.
And there's no specific difference between eating a protein bar and drinking a shake with protein powder in. It's just the way that it's consumed.
Exactly. No, it really is personal preference. Some people are ravishingly hungry after a training session and others have no appetite. So if you are someone with no appetite, then the shake is maybe a better option because it's not going to fill you up as much, but you're still going to get your protein in. Whereas if you are someone that's hungry, a shake's not going to satisfy you, then a bar or meal would be a better option.
Okay. And a big thing that's, I don't want to say trending at the moment, but that's quite popular is the clear whey. That's come out. That's just a little bit, if you're not that fond of like a creamy type of shake, that's more like a easy to drink, cool drink. So that's also just based on personal preference.
But it's also the lactose, right? So it doesn't really have any lactose in it. So for people that are very sensitive to lactose, like
Okay.
fuel bloating,
Yeah.
because you get people that say that I don't want to take a protein shake because it really makes them feel bloated, or
Yeah.
then a clear whey would be a good option.
Okay.
For if they want to still consume a whey protein and not a plant protein, for
Yes.
example. Because I know plant-based products are, it's the taste is quite different to, for example, whey. So it's not necessarily everyone's cup of tea. So it really is trial and error. You need to find what works for you, and use it consistently to see if do you like it or not, is it working for you or not. So another important thing is to bear in mind with recovery is that a lot of people hammer on the fact that we need to recover with protein, and yes, that is completely true, because that is what we have been saying this whole podcast long. But what's also really important is to replenish the glycogen stores, so the glucose that you've used up. And we spoke about that in the carbohydrate video or the podcast as well. But what's really important is we need to replenish the glycogen stores from that training session, so that the protein that you consume and that you're paying so much for is going to the muscle and not being converted to glycogen to replenish the glycogen stores. Because that's kind of your body's first priority, is to replenish the glycogen stores, right? Because it's your energy, it's your energy source. So if you are going to not consume any carbohydrates after your session, you are at risk of not really using the protein for what it's supposed to do, and that's to get the amino acids into the muscles and so forth. On that note, also, we see that we actually need insulin to almost transport those amino acids into the muscles. And how do you release insulin? With carbohydrates, right? You need glucose to release insulin so that the amino acids can actually go into the muscles. So that's why you'll see with the recovery drinks, they'll often have a mixture of carbohydrates and protein. So if you're just going to take a whey after your session, make sure that there's a form of carbohydrate with it. So you can either mix it into a smoothie that has some fruit, or just have a fruit on the side, or just bear that in mind, or have a rice cake or something, just so that you are, you're using the protein for what you're paying for, and not to replenish your glycogen stores, which you could have done easily with a fruit or a banana or something like that.
Makes sense.
So Suzanne, maybe tell us a little bit about like your recovery strategy, because I mean you do CrossFit how many times a week?
4 to 6 times depending on the week and the workload.
Yes, and I mean and CrossFit is quite strenuous on your muscles, especially. I mean I'm mostly in the endurance triathlon sphere, whereas you more in the muscle building and strength category. So maybe give us a bit of an idea as to like what's your recovery strategy?
Yeah, so I usually train in the mornings.
Mm.
So I'll try and eat at least a banana or something before I go and train. I'll do my session, and then my morning routine would be to make a protein shake. So I use a protein powder with some other supplements that I put in, and that's the first thing that I drink in the morning. And then that's how I start my day. And then by 10 o'clock, I have my snack, and then I just have my normal lunch. So, yes, I try and get a good combination of, or enough protein in during the day with my diet as well. But, yeah, my protein shake in the morning is my go-to, combined with a bit of creatine as well.
And do you feel like you can kind of, if you maybe miss your protein shake, or if you didn't prioritize your protein, that you can feel it the next day, or have you not really noticed it that much?
I think since I've been using it consistently, yes, definitely, it does definitely help with the recovery, especially if you had a hard week, or a lot of training in 1 week where you've had some big sessions. Yeah, it does take some time. There was a few weeks back that my protein powder was finished, and we were waiting for some stock, and there was just a bit of a mix-up, so I didn't have. And I do think it makes a difference. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because I mean, especially for a lot of people that are busy, you busy and you have a lot of things to do, you often forget, or you just don't plan effectively, and you don't end up hitting your protein goals like everyone likes to say. It really does make a difference, because you aren't recovering as optimally as possible. And also, together with that, there's so many other things that play a role with recovery. It's not just protein. If you nail your protein, that's a great start, but there's so many other things we can talk about that assists with recovery as well. Like you mentioned, creatine. We can maybe even look at collagen, vitamin C, omega-3, sleep. All of those things actually play a role in recovery. But I mean, getting in your protein shouldn't be as hard. And especially for women, we see a lot of women are, scared of protein, that it's going to bulk them, or they're going to become a bodybuilder. And on that note, like, you're going to have to consume quite a lot of protein, and probably something dodgy to, if you're not training like a bodybuilder. But if you're just gymming, or you're just doing general, high rocks or CrossFit, and you are consuming your protein throughout the day, you shouldn't bulk up too much. You should actually become really well toned with a very healthy and amazing body composition, which is great for longevity and disease prevention and those types of things.
Yeah, which is important as well. Yeah. So that's why it's easy to if you don't have time, especially if you have a bit busy schedule, get your training in, need to get to work as well, to just to take something like a protein shake in the morning. Or even in the afternoons if it's necessary. If you want to eat something in the morning, and then maybe don't have time in the afternoons to eat. So that's it's a great way to get that extra bit of protein in. How do you use it for your recovery after your big sessions?
Yeah, very similar to what you said. I like to take a protein and carbohydrate drink before my training session. I feel like that makes quite a difference for me. And then usually afterwards in a smoothie format, and then also try and stagger it throughout the day with food sources of protein as well. So what's really what I thought about now, which maybe is a bit of a practical thing for people to think about, because I get this question a lot. People are a bit confused as to like protein and how much protein is in food and so forth. Is when we said you can go up to 2.5 grams of protein per day. So let's round it to 2 grams. So let's say you weigh 70 grams, and that's very little, 70 kilograms, and you are consuming 2 grams per kilogram of body weight. So that means you need to consume 140 grams of protein. So then you're like, okay, great. What does that look like?
Yes.
That's confusing. Like, is that 140 grams of steak, or is that... Surely not. No, it's not. So that's 140 grams of pure protein. So if we look at, so it's easy if you're taking a shake, because you can see, okay, it has 20 grams of protein in 2 scoops, which is equal to 40 grams of powder, which whatever it may be. However, if you're looking at food, because please eat food also, not just, drink a shake, is we see that most of the animal sources contain about 7 grams of protein per 30 gram of cooked meat. So 30 gram of chicken breast or tuna or steak, whatever, will have about 7 grams of pure protein. And one egg also has about 7 grams of protein. If we look at a cup of milk, it has about 8 grams of protein. However, milk has lactose, which is carbohydrate as well as fat in it. And the plant-based proteins, they differ. So we'll see in about a cup of chickpeas, there'll also be around 7 to 10 grams of protein. So there we see that you need to consume a little bit of a higher amount
Yes.
to get the protein in. So it is really important to just bear that in mind. And what's nice about it is you can always look at the label. It often says it if you're buying a product, or use something like MyFitnessPal to just get a more or less an idea as to how much protein is in these products, especially if you are taking plant-based proteins. Then you can easily work out for yourself, okay, for breakfast I need to consume 2 eggs. That gives me 14 grams of protein, and then maybe add something else with it, or take my protein shake, or whatever the case may be. But then you can easily kind of work out throughout the day, if I need to consume 140 grams of protein, that means I'll need to consume like 90 grams of meat for lunch and 120 grams of meat for dinner, and then snacks in between, or my protein shake, that type of thing. So that makes it just a little bit more
practical.
Practical to bear that in mind, because I know a lot of people are a bit confused with that. They're like, okay, but how does that translate into what I eat?
Great. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. So I think that's it for today on protein. We will definitely dive into a lot of the other components of recovery, like I've mentioned before. Definitely also talk about creatine, collagen. That's a very hot topic for a lot of people, having questions about it. And then I think it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it.